All right, good. All right, ladies. So what we have been doing is we have been looking at societal institution uh, since last week. So we looked at the family. What else we looked at?
Education,
Education. We looked at also what else? What other institution?
religious.
Religion. Yes, the religious institution. And if I should ask you once to give me one statement about Caribbean family, what would that one statement be? Just one line about Caribbean families.
sir.
Go ahead for me.
I guess you could say that the Caribbean family doesn't really fit the typical meaning of a family
All
or
right.
the usual, like, ideal meaning.
The ideal Western concept of family.
Yeah.
Agree. Yes. Just like how everything else is diverse, our culture in the Caribbean is a very diverse culture. I think it's the same way. The family is very, very diverse. We have several different family types in the Caribbean, some more prevalent than others. Uh, and that's just one of the factors. What would you say about the education system? Sinclair, what would you, your mic is working?
Yes, sir.
What would you say about the education system in the Caribbean?
Well, I would say that the education system in the Caribbean, it is a formal system, and this system started from pre-colonial emancipation time, where
Mm,
at one point blacks weren't allowed, and then eventually over time after emancipation become independent, then you have schools where blacks are allowed, and it still imitated Western curriculum.
very good, very good, very good. Duncan, you have a mic? Do you have a mic? Duncan,
Yes, sir.
what would you say about Caribbean religion?
Sir, I'll say that you mainly see Christianity in the Caribbean,
Mm-hmm.
like the Baptist, the Shelter Baptist, the Spiritual Baptist, and also Roman Catholic.
Yes. And also the North American derived religions are also popular. I think they are more popular now. For example, the Church of God, the Seventh-day Adventist, the Jehovah's Witness, those are North American based. Pentecostals, in fact, the two largest denominations, the Seventh-day Adventists and the Pentecostals, very, very popular churches here today. And so we know also that our religion is very, very diverse in the Caribbean. So today, what we're going to look at is our justice system in the Caribbean. And we looked at those already. How would you define the justice system? How would you define the justice system? Ottie Brown, your mic is working.
Yes, sir.
How would you describe the justice system? I hear the word justice system. What comes to mind?
I think of the branches,
Yes, branches of what?
like legislative. I think there's judicial, and I don't remember the other one.
Executive.
Executive, yes.
There are three branches of government. Yes, the judicial, the executive, and the legislative. But when you hear the justice system, what comes to mind? Anyone else? Thanks for trying. Anyone
Sir?
else?
Sir?
Go ahead. Go ahead for me.
When I think of the justice system, I think of an institution that has the purpose um, of let's say convicting or uh, convicting criminals or making sure that criminals pay for their crime,
Mm-hmm.
and basically uh, an institution that sets the standard for people to know what is right and wrong in terms of, I don't know, criminal activity. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, man, you're correct. You're very correct. Now, ladies, remember societal institutions is to reinforce behaviors, right? It establishes standard of how we should behave. Now, the first place that reinforces our behavior is the family. The family teaches us how to behave in society. The school then reinforces it when you go to school, how you should behave, and also the church. When everything else fails, when the family fails, the church fails, our religion fails, or the education system fails, then you end up using the justice system, and you're correct. Now, the justice system comprises the body of legal rules, legal institution, and machinery which operates within the particular country or jurisdiction. So, in other words, the justice system makes up of several different parts, right? The justice system, the judiciary, I need to let this clear. The judiciary is part of the justice system. So the judiciary and the justice system, the justice system is broader. The judiciary is much smaller, right? So when we talk about the judiciary, we're really talking about the courts. Anything to do with courts, the courtrooms, and so that's the judiciary. The justice system includes the court, the police and the defense force, the correctional system, which is like our prison, our juvenile centers, common law, which is also part of the judiciary, the court, our constitution, acts of parliament. All of these are part of the justice system, right? Now, when we talk about law, we're talking about, there are several different definitions out there about law, right? And one of them is the enforceable body of rules that govern society, rules that govern how we behave, are rules to guide our behavior. That's the law. So you have several different types of law or sources of law. So all the students who plan to do law at UWI, this is a good place where we're starting today when it comes to law, right? So there are different sources of law in the Caribbean. So the first source of law is the Constitution. Then we have legislation. So legislation is different from the Constitution. Then we have common law and judicial precedent, which is different from legislation and Constitution. Then we have custom, international law, or regional treaties, which actually forms part of legal sources and equity. Now, the first one I want to look at today is our Constitution. Somebody, could you read this for me, please? What is the Constitution?
What is the Constitution? The Constitution can be defined as a body of law containing the rules which determine the direction of the state, including the matter in which the state is organized and the body of fundamental principles according to which the state is governed. I don't know what that name is, but you can see it on the thing.
Yeah, but continue.
The Constitution legitimizes law. It is the base from which the rule of law originates and derives its authority or validity. All norms of society stem from the Constitution. The Constitution may be viewed as the parent law for all other laws are measured against it. It is the supreme law of the land. In Collymore v. it was said, no one, not even Parliament, can disobey the Constitution with impunity.
Yes. Thank you very much, Sanchez. So the Constitution, ladies, is the highest law of the land in all Caribbean territories. The Constitution is the highest law of the land. Now, as mentioned, this is a body of rule. Our Constitution is written in a very small book. Yes, each country has its own constitution, but they are very, very similar to each other in the British Caribbean, I should say. So it is a book and it contains all the rules. It tells you how the country should operate, how your governments should be formed, how you elect leaders, and all of these different stuff. In fact, the Constitution tells you how to make other rules. So as it states right here, it legitimizes law. It gives the government the right to make other laws. In fact, all other laws are basically measured against it. So if the government of the day pass a rule or pass a law and it infringes, meaning it goes against one of the rules in the Constitution stands and the government has to change that rule. Recent example in Jamaica. The government of Jamaica would have passed the National ID Bill, what they call the NIDS bill. But the bill was violated several principles of the Constitution because the government at first wanted us to force us to give certain information like our fingerprint, our DNA samples, and everything is going to, well, the plan was that you have to give up those information. And if you don't give up those, if you don't have the ID, you are not able to access, to get a passport, you are not able to go to school, you are not able to go to get your pay or all of these different stuff. So the government was basically forcing the country, members of the country, to give up their information. And if they don't give it up, then they can't use the different institutions in the state. Now, the Constitution tell us that the government doesn't have that right, right? There's supposed to be freedom of movement. There's supposed to be freedom of opportunities. In fact, the Constitution gives you the right to own a passport. So they really can't stop you from owning a passport. So you can't tell the citizen of a country that you need to have this ID in order to apply for a passport. That goes against the Constitution. And so in this case, Collymore versus the Attorney General, it states here that no one, not even Parliament, can disobey the Constitution with impunity. And as a result of that, the government had to abolish the bill because the court ruled that the bill was unconstitutional. It violated a lot of Jamaicans' constitutional rights. So the Constitution is very, very powerful. The function of the Constitution. So one, the Constitution tells you about state institutions, how they are created, how they are established, how they are to function. So for example, the Constitution tells you how you should select a governor general, how you should select the prime minister or members of parliament, how laws should be passed in the parliament, how different institutions should run, for example, like the police force. What is the state? It also tells you about other bodies, independent bodies within the country and how they should be regulated. And the most important function of the Constitution is that it protects your human rights. So in Jamaica, we have in our Constitution that is called a Bill of Rights that outlines, the Bill of Rights outlines all our rights as citizens of Jamaica. Now, before the Bill of Rights, we used to have something that was called a, what do you call it? It was Chapter 3. It was Chapter 3 of the Constitution, but they would have replaced it with a Bill of Rights that outlines the different rights that we have as citizens. Now, I'm going to see if I can share some of those rights that we have as citizens. And it is important to know the different rights that we have as citizens in this country. One second, please. It's not a Bill of Rights. We actually call it a Charter of Rights. The Americans call it Bill of Rights. We call it Charter of Rights here in Jamaica. Someone, could you read the Charter of, from here for me, please? Rights.
Rights that you are entitled to under what? Rights that you are entitled to under the Constitution of Jamaica, the simplified version. The right to life, liberty, and security of person, except in the execution of the sentence of a court in respect of a criminal offense of which the person has been convicted. The right to freedom of thought, conscience, belief, and observance of political doctrines. The right to freedom of expression, the right to seek.
One second for me, Anya. You have the rights for freedom of thought, conscience, your belief, and your observance of political doctrine. So nobody can dictate to you and tell you how to think. It's your right in the Constitution. And anybody that wants to basically infringe upon that right, you can take legal remedy. Go ahead for me.
Okay.
Rights to freedom of expression.
The right to freedom of expression, the right to seek, receive, distribute, or disseminate information, opinions, and ideas through any media, the right to peaceful assembly and association, the right to freedom of movement, that is to say, the right, one, of every citizen of Jamaica to enter Jamaica, and two, of every person lawfully in Jamaica to move around freely throughout Jamaica, to reside in any part of Jamaica, and to leave Jamaica.
1 second, 1 second. Right to freedom of movement. Therefore, as a Jamaican citizen, the government cannot stop you from returning to Jamaica. You have a right to enter Jamaica, and also you have a right to move around freely. So therefore, with the government state of emergencies, the curfew order that they have right now, it is violating this right here. And right now, the government, even though the Constitution gives the government permission to have state of emergencies, but having wholesale state of emergency one after the other, it's taking away the rights of citizens. And the court ruled recently that it was illegal. Continue. Rights to equality.
The right to equality before the law, the right to equitable and human treatment by any public authority in the exercise of any function, the right to freedom from discrimination on the ground of one, being male or female, two, race, place of origin, class, color, religion, political opinions. The right to everyone to one, protection from search of the person and property, two, respect for protection of private and family life and privacy of the home, and three, protection of other property and of communication. The right of every child to be protected by virtue of being a minor, part of a family, society, and the state. The right of every child who is a citizen of Jamaica to public education institution at the pre-primary and primary levels.
So one
The right to
second,
enjoy
1 second for me, Anya. So as citizens of Jamaica, we have right to public education institution at the pre-primary and the primary levels. But what about the secondary? And also, what about university? Continue.
The right
The
to
right.
enjoy a healthy and productive environment free from the threat of injury or damage from environmental abuse and degradation of the ecological heritage. The right of every citizen of Jamaica to be registered to vote. The right of every citizen of Jamaica who is so registered to vote in free and fair elections. The right of every citizen of Jamaica to be guaranteed a passport and not to be detained or deprived except by due process of the law. The right to protection from torture or inhuman or degrading punishment. Inhumane. With an E, that's why I said it weird. Or inhumane or degrading punishment or other treatment. The right to freedom of the person, the protection of property rights, the right to due process, the right to freedom of religion.
Yes. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anya. So if you see right here that in the Constitution of Jamaica, we have certain rights. Now, recently they would have added this right here, the right to enjoy a healthy and productive environment free from the threat of injury or damage from environmental abuse and degradation of the ecological heritage. That's a right, and that's one of the reasons the environmentalists are taking the prime minister to court over the cockpit country and also that mountain stretch along the north coast. And so let us see how they are going to go about when it comes to how the court will rule, because that's a constitutional right. Here, freedom of religion, another constitutional right that we have in this country. Freedom, the right to peaceful assembly, meaning an association. We can join any association that we want. We can form any association that we want. These are rights that we have under the Constitution. And if government should pass any law, right, that violates any of these constitutional rights, then for sure the Constitution prevails. Now, moving on now to the different parts of the Constitution. The Constitution involves the chapter on citizenship. Then you have the section, which is the Charter of Rights. They have it as Bill of Rights here. It defines the powers of the heads of government or the heads of state. What power? Because there are some limitations to power. The Governor General has limits. The Prime Minister has limits. The MPs have limits. The Parliament has limits. Everybody, there's some limitation. It defines how the executive and the judiciary should operate, and the different public service and judicial commission. And also it outlines how the budget of the country how you should go about formulating or passing the budget of the country. The next that we have, another source of law that govern our behavior other than the Constitution, is acts of parliament, legislation. So these are rules that the government pass in the parliament to govern society. So they deal with more, the Constitution tends to be broad, while these legislations tend to look at some specific things. So for example, you have the road code that looks at how you should drive. You have the building code. You have all of these different codes that Parliament passed to govern different parts of the society. And then another source of law here is what we call the common law. So I'm going to ask someone to read this for me, please. The common law.
Another name for common law is case law. Common law or case law is an important source of law in the Commonwealth Caribbean. Common law is legal principles derived from cases. It is relevant where there are no applicable status. Common law or case law is a legal as well historical source. It is a historical source because the existence of the common law tradition in the Commonwealth Caribbean is directly linked to our colonial past. In other words, we practice it because it was transplanted to the region under the English.
Thank you very much. So the common law was transplanted, or the common law came to us from Britain, right, or the UK, for those of us who are in the Commonwealth Caribbean, or the English-speaking Caribbean. The common law, basically, there are some rules in the court system that the law is not clear on, right? So these are the Constitution. The Constitution is not directly clear on it, and the legislation passed by Parliament, they are not so explicitly clear. And so what the court has done is that they use principles from the Acts of Parliament and the Constitution to arrive at judgments in different cases. And so after a period of time, the principles from these cases are called the common law. All right? So common law is basically principle derived from cases. So every other case, if you realize that when lawyers are in court arguing, they always make reference to case. In this case, this would have happened. And so they are basically relying on the common law in order for the court to make a decision in their favor. Now, this is a justice system in the Caribbean, or the hierarchy of the court. We have in Jamaica, we have the Privy Council, which is our highest court. Then we have, and the Privy Council is in the UK. Then we have the Court of Appeal. Then the Supreme Court, the Gun Court, the Revenue Court. So the Gun Court, if you have gun-related offenses, you go to the Gun Court. If you owe money in terms of taxes, you go to the Tax Court. Then after that, you have the Resident Magistrate Court and the Petty Session Court. So for example, if Shannon, both you and Sinclair are friends, you lend Sinclair some money and she refused to give you your money, you go to the police, you report her, you take her to the Petty Session Court, right? Because that's petty. The Resident Magistrate Court deals with other issues like theft and all of these different stuff. Then you have other different courts. You have the drug court, the traffic court. If for example, you have problems with the road code, the tax court, the family court, the juvenile court, and you have all of these different courts, right? Now, the one thing that we need to know here is that while in Jamaica we have the Privy Council, there are some Caribbean countries that have the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, right? So not all Caribbean countries, their highest court is the Privy Council. Before the CCJ, all Caribbean countries had the Privy Council. Not all English-speaking Caribbean countries had the Privy Council, which is in the UK. But right now, a few Caribbean countries decide that they are not sticking with the Privy Council, but they are going with the CCJ. Now, if you have a decision at the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeal, I'm going to use an example, the Resident Magistrate Court. You go to the Resident Magistrate Court, you are charged for something, you didn't agree with the decision, or you believe that the judge would have ruled erroneously on a matter, then you can go to the Supreme Court to appeal that decision. Or if you decide that the Supreme Court didn't rule in your favor, then you could go to the Court of Appeal, and the last place is the Privy Council. So once you reach the Privy Council, that is final. You can't bring your case nowhere. So wherever the Privy Council rules, that is where it stops. But there are times when the Court of Appeal would have made decision and the Privy Council overruled that decision and said, the Court of Appeal, you were wrong in making that decision. Or the Resident Magistrate, you were wrong, right? So these are some of the hierarchy of the court. Notice in the Caribbean that there are two final courts in the Caribbean. We have the Privy Council, which is in the UK for some countries, and for other countries, you have the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is CCJ. Now, there are two functions of the CCJ. One, you have the original jurisdiction, meaning that Caribbean countries sign a treaty that is called the Treaty of Chaguaramas. And it basically governs trade in the Caribbean. The Treaty of Chaguaramas governs how Caribbean countries should relate to each other. So one of the terms in the Treaty of Chaguaramas is freedom of movement. And so as Caribbean citizens, we are able to move freely in other Caribbean countries without any form of prejudice, because all our countries would have signed that treaty. Now, recently in a case, a couple of years ago, as the Shanique Mary case, Shanique Mary versus the government of Barbados. Shanique Mary would have gone to Barbados and she was detained for no reason. Well, and she said that they would have raped her. The immigration officer would have raped her, something to that effect. And she brought Barbados to court to say that her right to freedom of movement in the Caribbean was violated under the Treaty of Chaguaramas, and she won that case. So that is the original jurisdiction. And then there's the other jurisdiction, so that is one function of the CCJ, the original jurisdiction, to ensure that the treaty or trade rules or freedom of movement are followed according to the treaty by member states, those countries who signed the treaty. And then the next jurisdiction is the appellate court, in which it acts as a final court for some countries. So instead of other countries using the Privy Council, the second jurisdiction is that the CCJ acts as a final court. So the CCJ has two functions. Now, all these countries are countries that use the CCJ in its original jurisdiction. So that is the Treaty of Chaguaramas, right? Antigua, Bahamas, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, Grenada, Haiti, Jamaica, Montserrat, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, Suriname, Trinidad, and Tobago. However, the countries that abolish the Privy Council and replace the Privy Council with the CCJ as its appellate court, these countries are Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and Guyana. These are the four territories that would have signed on to the CCJ. Now, in the Caribbean today, we have a lot of debates about the CCJ. A lot of debates about the CCJ versus the Privy Council. There are some persons who are in favor of Jamaica abolishing the Privy Council, and others who are saying that the Privy Council should remain, and others are saying that we should be a part, use the CCJ not only in its original jurisdiction, but also as an appellate court. Now, I'm asking someone to read the first point for me under the debate.
What I would love for the government to do then is to start to educate the people about the CCJ. The average citizen needs to be told that Jamaica is already contributing to the running of the CCJ. We need to be told that the real costs associated with going completely ludicrous, that we have to apply for a United Kingdom UK visa before we can get this.
All right. Thank you very much. So, in other words, remember, as Jamaican citizens, we have to get a visa to go to the UK. So, are you telling me that in order for us to use the Privy Council, we have to apply for visa? Not only visa, but in order to apply for the visa, you need credit cards. You have to pay for hotel fees and all of these different stuff. And so, in fact, poor people cannot access justice at the Privy Council level. If your constitutional right is violated, or it's only the rich people alone can go to the Privy Council, poor people cannot go to the Privy Council. And so that is one argument that is used in favor of having the Privy Council. The next thing is that the CCJ, while its headquarters is in Trinidad and Tobago, in Trinidad to be specific, it is a traveling court, meaning that the court travel from island to island. So all the countries that are part of it, whenever they're having some form of case to deal with, the citizens don't travel to Trinidad, but the citizens travel, the judges travel to the other countries and judicate on the different cases, right? Now, another issue that, well, so that is the court system that we would have looked at. Another institution that we have is the correctional system, which is the prison system. And this is something from the Jamaica Observer recently, where it said prisoners say hellish condition worsened since COVID. In Jamaica, and I'm speaking specifically of Jamaica, is that we have problem when it comes to rehabilitation of our prisoners. Our prisons are have overcrowded. We have a lot of inhumane condition, and the infrastructures of the prisons are very poor. In fact, one of the prisons that we use, which is the General Penitentiary, was built in 1845, and that was built to house 650 inmates. Right now, they have over 1,700 inmates. So that tells you that the proximity of persons in the prison is very, very much inhumane. Another area in Jamaica that we have is another part of the justice system is the police force. And in Jamaica, for sure, we have extrajudicial killing. These are two recent articles from the Jamaica Gleaner. Deadly police shooting sparks protests in St. Anne, and alleged killer cop removed from frontline duty. This is damning. In fact, the amount of criminals that, well, the amount of people that criminals are killing on a yearly basis is similar to the number of persons that the police just kill, just like that. In fact, in 2014, the police had a squad that was called the Death Squad. So what they did was that they go out into the communities, and if they said somebody's in a wrongdoing, instead they take that person and bring them through the formal court system, they become executioner and kill those persons who are alleged criminals. Mario Dean is one example of someone who was in police custody, and he died in police custody. And so people see the police force as an oppressive institution. Very, very oppressive. And then there's a lot of bribes when it comes to the police force. When they stop you on the road with a traffic violation, the police officer asks left and right, meaning either you're going to left some money or he will write the ticket, right? So there's a lot of bribery in our police force. And INDECOM is trying. So INDECOM, the government of Jamaica, recognize all of these issues and establish something that is called an institution that is called INDECOM to ensure that police doesn't violate our, we call it now, our different rights as citizens. But it's not only Jamaica. Recently in Trinidad and Tobago, this young lady worked at the court office, right? She worked at one of the courts there. Her name is Andrea. She took a taxi to go home. They couldn't find her. They found her dead. And the police officers in Trinidad recently, this was February 14, 2021, went in and beat this person here who is the accused person, because they said that his car was the car that she went into, killed him. He was basically murdered, right? Now, I'm not justifying that I'm not saying that he is innocent. That's not what I'm trying to say, because they found some of her things on him. things like her credit card, her cell phone. So these are some of the stuff that they would have found in his possession. In fact, when they went into the house, the police would have beat him badly. And so they beat him till he died. Family members would have videotaped the incident. And on the video, he said, "Oh God, I know nothing," right? And when he went to the hospital, he refused treatment and he died. Later on, the story is still continuing because some of the family members said that they stole his car and used the car in the murder, something to that effect. I don't know. But my issue here is that with this case is that nobody going to solve Andrea's murder. We don't know how Andrea's murder is going to be solved because we don't have a witness. He's not here to testify in the court or to tell the court whether or not how he came in possession of the young lady's credit card and phone, and if his car was truly missing, how did he recover the car, and all of these different issues. If you're getting what I'm saying. So the police officers in the Caribbean has basically taken on the role as gods, where they determine who live and who should die. In our court system in the Caribbean, which I'm wrapping up now, is that the court system is not that perfect. Most of our laws are influenced by Britain. Most of our judges still wear wigs and robes. There's a lot of backlog of cases. There's a perception in Jamaica that the court favors the elite. So for example, I'm giving you two examples. Not only the court, but the law. Recently, a young man during the whole COVID pandemic in Harnett Garden came out on a video and he tell to the Prime Minister that he's not going in, and he curses indecent language and all of these different stuff and all of that, right? People say lock him up. I don't know what has been happening to Jamaica, but it seems as if we are leading to the words of a dictator state. Not saying that the young man should violate the COVID protocols, but he should not be locked up or they send police to his home because he cursed an indecent language on a video towards the Prime Minister, because that's part of his constitutional right. Anyway, so we have the young man from Arnett Gardner Inner City community. Broke the curfew. The police didn't go there and see him. They actually saw him on a video. Then we have another situation where we had some very light-skinned Jamaicans on boat on yachts at their different beach parties, and nothing came out of that story. They just give them a warning and that's it. And the police actually caught them in the act violating the curfew orders, 2 Jamaicans. Next thing, Aki and the MP. A couple years ago, a man was passing on King's House Road where he picked some Akis to go and eat from the Governor General's property. He was sentenced to prison for 6 years. But yet still we have MPs who are stealing millions of dollars in terms of corruption, and nothing is coming of it. And then we have outdated, most of our system in the court is very paper-based, and we have very poor infrastructure. The courts are very old, and justice is inaccessible, especially to the poorest among us. They can't afford lawyers, and they can't afford the fees to go to the Privy Council. All right, ladies, so that's it for the justice system. We meet next week where we're going to wrap up societal institution. Next week, we wrap up societal institution, and then tomorrow, which is Thursday, you're going to do your presentation. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye, sir.
Bye, sir.